Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go, man. Hunt the ball. Let's go, family on 3. 1, 2, 3, family.
Hello, football family. Welcome back to Huddle It Up Films, Part 2. The interior offensive linemen. Just finished talking about Tyree Phillips, Ben Cleveland, and Kevin Zeitler. What about the other four guys on the line? Gabe Ferguson, Situation Room. Gabe, titled Linderbaum episode here. So why don't you go ahead and plug your show, your and Jordan's show coming up here during the season.
Yeah, so I host a podcast with my good friend Jordan Coe called The Situation Room over at filmstudybaltimore.com. We do a breakdown of the film after every single game, and kind of look at some of the plays that are really interesting to us, the plays that kind of mattered and key instances. Look at the play calling, look at what the sequencing that led up to the play call, look at the execution, and kind of just break it down from a film study perspective. And I think it's a really cool way to kind of digest the really interesting points and sometimes the really key points of a football game.
Yeah, game flow, how the coordinators are attacking, all that kind of thing. And fans love that kind of stuff too. So I get something out of the show when I start to think about, because I often just watch the play, kind of grade the player. Of course, I have game situation in mind on that, but I'm not taking a big look at how we're attacking it until later in the week. So love Gabe and Jordan's show there. Must watch. So Gabe, let's start out with the highly touted rookie, first round pick, Tyler Linderbaum. Now you were giving me a hard time. Let you get this in. You're giving me a hard time before we started, because on draft night you were with us, and we were all together, and we picked Tyler Linderbaum, and I was a little disappointed, and it wasn't because of the player. I think Tyler Linderbaum is going to be very good, and we'll get into that, but it was because that I liked a lot of centers in this draft, 5 of them to be in particular, and I thought we could have grabbed an edge or a cornerback and not had to pay somebody there and drafted the center in the second or third round. So, Gabe, you were on me. You were, if I remember right, Jordan was really going at me, but I think you took some shots at me too, didn't you?
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with your idea about the value of the pick, because I think there were other players who might have been, playing at a more valuable position at that point in the draft. But getting back to what the Ravens did do with their selection, you get a guy who was often touted as a top 10, 15 player in the class, one of the best center prospects that we've seen in the past decade, and you're getting him at the back end of the first round. That's still good value, whether or not the position is that valuable. If he can be the kind of player that can transform an offense, because you went from having like a mediocre athlete at center to being one of the most athletic centers that you'll ever see in the NFL, that makes a big difference. It allows you to completely open up your running game. It allows you to, do different styles of offensive run schemes. You can do different gap schemes. You can do a lot more zone now. You can do some pin pull. There's so many things you can do with the center like Linderbaum. You can almost use him as like a weapon on your offense, and his ability to get to the second level and block people. That's something that we haven't really had at the center position really ever. I mean, probably the best center that we had over the years was Matt Burke, and he was an older guy when he came in, and he was very smart. He was very cerebral, very good technician, but he wasn't an athlete that Linderbaum is. So he really kind of opens up the playbook, and I'm excited about what he can do from that perspective.
Me too. I like the pick. I just like the other players on the board. And but Linderbaum, just a heck of a player. I think he brings both a high ceiling and a high floor, which is something I love in the first round picks. I don't like, even towards the end, I don't like these roll of the dice. I feel like if you bust out on a first round pick, I mean, yes, they're on their rookie contract, but they get expensive kind of quickly. Look at what Hollywood was making last year and what he would have made on the tag and all that other stuff. So first round pick for an offensive lineman to have a leader, somebody that I never heard a bad word spoken about him, as far as like on any kind of scouting reports, people get to know him. The Iowa offensive line is obviously a factory for offensive linemen. Good coaches over there, all the way back to Kirk Ferentz, and it's just a nice program, a safe pick. Kind of like eating a bowl of soup on a cold day, man. Like, you feel good in a draft having a player like Tyler Linderbaum on your team.
Yeah, I think he's an immediate impact player. And that's what you want from your first round pick. You want somebody who can plug and play as a starter. He can come in and improve that position for you. And he's going to be there for, not only day one of his rookie year, but he's going to have 5 years and maybe more if he earns a second contract. Hopefully he does. So that's an exciting prospect for the Ravens to kind of have that position locked up for the next 5 years, not have to worry about one of the key positions along your offensive line. And that, I think that's something to be excited about for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And, we talk about his run blocking. Of course, Iowa has its certain type of plays that it likes to run in the running game. But when I watch Tyler Linderbaum move, Gabe, I don't see any kind of block that he can't execute on the first level right in front of him or on the second level climbing up the linebackers. He has the athleticism of like a tight end, a blocking tight end. It's really, really obvious. It jumps off the tape, just the way he's able to move. And then also his IQ. So, being quick doesn't mean that you play fast, or running a fast 40 doesn't mean you play fast. Linderbaum has the mind to allow him to play fast, to allow his body. So he's got it in the physical and the mental part that allows him to play super fast for a center.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's definitely a smart player. He and that's not to take away from his athleticism either, because he's a top-notch athlete. He can do a lot of things, and one thing that you have to remember at the center position, you're often not tasked with just lining up over a nose guard. Sometimes the nose guard will be lined up over you, but that's not common. A lot of times you're there to assist one of the guards next to you. You can help out on a double team and then get to the second level. And his athleticism and ability to get to that second level can be a difference maker in the Ravens run game. So that's something that I think is key to remember. He's a little bit undersized, so to speak. I think he's just around 300 pounds, which, it's not tiny by any stretch of the imagination, but he is smaller than some of the players the Ravens have had playing at center in the past, for instance. But I think that he'll make up for that with his leverage. He was a wrestler in high school. He knows how to be that low man and use his natural leverage, use that strength in his lower body. And I think he's really going to be able to adapt those techniques and bring them to the NFL.
Me too. I think it's a slam dunk, and there are just a lot of things working in his favor. When you talk about those combo blocks, again, another plus in this category is his timing on that and his feel for it, because you have to have a feel for it. Gabe, if you and I are blocking together and I'm helping you, you might be struggling on this particular snap, and I might have to stick with you and help you a little longer before I go to the linebacker, or you might have just got beat, and I got to really just pick up the slack for you and forget about the linebacker. Or you might be handling business by yourself, and all you need is like a little shove from me before I move up. I might even use you as your guy as a springboard to help spring me up to the second level. So when it comes to those kind of things, yet another check mark in Tyler Linderbaum's favor is his timing.
Yeah, that's really one of the underrated aspects, I think, of offensive linemen is timing, and it's kind of the processing speed of their ability to see, what's going on around them, who needs help, what is the defense doing, reacting to the movement of your offensive line, and who you need to go and block, and the angle you need to take to get to that block. And I think Linderbaum possesses all those skills. He's able to process quickly. He's able to identify, what he needs to do at the second level, the angle he needs to take to block him, so his running back can, hit that hole and get the biggest gain that he can. And that's something that I think is really important. It's something that is going to really give you those extra couple of yards and turn what might be, a 4 or 5 yard gain into an 8, 9, 10, or even, a house call. That's the
Right.
kind of difference that you can make with a good second level block.
Yes, with some explosiveness in the backfield, especially if you consider Lamar carrying the ball a few times out of there. I mean, it could be one block and really spring somebody for a long, long game touchdown, game-changing plays. Linderbaum has a highlight out there. Unfortunately, not going to show it on my channel because for some reason they pick on me with that area, Gabe. But it was a clip that stuck in my head is him blocking 3 different guys on one play. It was just like one of those pass plays where you kind of roll the line out to the right with the quarterback, and he had one guy trying to hit his hole, the other guy trying to hit the other hole. He managed to take both of them, and then when the pass was completed short, he climbed up to the second level and got somebody out in front of the block. So he just makes these amazing plays as a center that are fun to watch. It's rare to have fun offensive line tape. So we'll let him get into it real quick about the question marks for Tyler Linderbaum. And that, as you mentioned, is his size and his length. He's shorter armed than most centers. He's lighter than most centers. So when he's matched up against Travis Jones, and we got a report yesterday, I think from Jonas Schaefer, that Travis Jones looked good against Linderbaum. What is your concern level when it comes to Linderbaum being bullied, bull rushed into the backfield, or with the shorter arms? A lot of times that leads to you not being able to stay attached and sustaining blocks. So I have opinions on this, but I'd like to hear you go first, please.
Well, I would just say it's pretty rare that you're going to have a defensive tackle with that kind of length line up over your center and bull rushing him. I mean, it might happen, but it's probably going to be less than 10% of your pass blocking snaps. And I do think that Linderbaum, while he doesn't have that length and with the arms and that size, I think he does use his body well. I think he does have functional strength. There might be, if anything, something that he can improve would be his pass blocking. I think he's probably better in the run game than pass blocking, which is different than some of the other guys the Ravens have on their team right now. So that's a skill set that he can look to improve, I think. But it's not a concern I have really. And I think in the times that he's actually going to be ISO'd and like in those one-on-one situations, it's really not going to be a big impact.
So yes, low volume on that, and then plus, I think that he has very good body control. His strength, it's something that he's hopefully going to gain at the NFL level, getting in an NFL weight room. But he does understand leverage. You mentioned his wrestling background, where if he's getting out muscled to one side, he can kind of maneuver his body subtly, has that flexibility in just overall body flexibility to be able to position himself in a way against a stronger player where he can at least hold the fort down. And I mean, if you have a quarterback with the pocket awareness of Lamar Jackson, he's going to pay off, I think, big time in the pass game. I think he's going to be a better pass blocker than people give him credit for, just because I don't see him getting beat. I can't recall a time seeing him getting beat off the snap, guy in the quarterback's face. If he's helping out, if he's involved in a block, or if he's handling a block by himself, he's usually doing fun from the fundamental standpoint and his body control. Everything else is just so good, Gabe, that if he lacks a little strength, I don't think it's going to be a problem. But the length, I want to make a comment on. I think that he has another very good skill, which is strong hands. If he is attached to you, you don't go anywhere. So as far as a lot of other short arm guys will not be able to sustain their blocks, Tyler Linderbaum's hand placement is on the money. And once he gets a hold of your jersey, man, I like his hand strength. Did you notice that when you were watching him?
Yeah, I definitely noticed it. And I think that gets back to what, we were saying about his wrestling background. And it's a leverage thing, and it's something that he learned from wrestling. And you can see him use that on the football field. The way he can position his body, you can see him take those angles with the way, he can kind of uncoil his hips and provide a good anchor, despite the fact that he's often, giving up, 30, 40 pounds to some of these defensive linemen. He has that functional strength where it matters. And I really think that it's not going to be a concern. I mean, he may not be the best pass protecting center as a rookie coming out, but I don't think he's going to be someone who's a turnstile at the position either. I think he's going to be an above average pass protector at center right away. And what he can do in the running game is going to make any of those concerns become like minor at the best.
So I'm figuring overall his first year, let's just talk about 2022. I'm seeing an above average player. That's how I would, maybe not a Pro Bowler or All Pro. I mean, he has the name brand for it. You know what I mean? Maybe he gets voted to the Pro Bowl, but I don't think he's, top 2, 3, 5 centers in the league. But I think he is going to be an above average player in his first year. So it just in general terms, how would you characterize what you would expect from Tyler Linderbaum this year?
I would say that is going to be his floor. I think he has potential to be like a top 5 center right away.
Okay.
I think some of it will depend on the scheme, especially the run scheme and how he's highlighted in that scheme. If they play to his strengths and kind of put in a little bit more of a diverse and versatile run game, then I think he can really show off and become
Right.
that kind of like all Pro or Pro Bowl level player. We saw a guy last year that the Kansas City Chiefs drafted, and Creed Humphrey. They drafted him in the second round, but he came in and was immediately shown that he is, one of the best centers in the NFL. I don't think it's out of the question that Linderbaum could have a similar effect in his rookie season.
Yes, Creed Humphrey had a very good year. He's got a name behind him already now too. How well he played for the Chiefs last year. Very good player. So let's move on to Patrick Mccary. Interesting player, interesting case. Got signed late last season to a very manageable deal. I'll flash the deal up on the screen just to give details. But you see there, Gabe, we got basically a starting caliber offensive lineman that we're paying a backup price to be a backup. So to me, that just screams win all the way around. And I think that between Bozeman and Mccary, the Ravens chose Patrick Mccary to give that contract to. It looks like, or Mccary was the first to take it. However, that worked out. They spent that interior O-line money on Patrick Mccary.
Yeah, and I think Mccary provides a little more versatility than Bozeman did. Obviously, he played last year at right tackle a considerable amount. I think he was a breath of fresh air. I don't think anybody expected him to play as well as he did in that role. He is undersized, similar to Linderbaum with his shorter arms as like especially as a tackle. But he was able to play really well. He had very good feet, quickness that was enough to hold up at that position. I think he's better suited to play on the inside. But realistically, he can play any of four positions for you, and in a pinch, he could probably play left tackle if necessary. That is where he played in college. So I'm really excited that they were able to keep him on at I think a very reasonable contract rate, like you said. And he's someone that is going to be that next man up, pretty much anywhere along the offensive line. If there's any injury that takes place, knock on wood that doesn't happen, but it seems like there's always going to be something that happens, even if it's just for 1 or 2 games here or there. Have him ready to come in and take some snaps for you and play at an above average level is really important.
Yes, I'm really happy with the way the offseason just came about from multiple positions, but how things evolved on the offensive line. One of the things I said is, man, this offensive line will be a success if Mekari is penciled in as a 6th man before the year. And then here we are now in June talking about Patrick Mccary in that role. It's nothing against him as a starter. I think he's serviceable, like you said, maybe even 4 spots, 5 spots, maybe left tackle's a stretch, but he's serviceable across the line. And you're not planning on starting him because the talent around him is just as good, and you want to hold out Mccary to fill in wherever there's an injury, long season there. So from that standpoint, I believe the depth of the offensive line, big success. We're talking about guards and centers, but tackles too. Just a big success from Eric DeCosta in kind of quote unquote building that wall for Lamar.
Yeah, absolutely. There's more depth along the offensive line going into the season. I think I can remember in years. I know we're not talking about an offensive tackle, but you realistically have 4 guys who can play right tackle for you, and that's not even including someone like Tyree Phillips who's played there a lot more than he should. So I think that's something that is going to really make a big difference going into the season. They are able to withstand an injury or probably even 2 injuries if it happens, and having quality players who have starting experience is really important when it comes to that, because it's really hard to stay healthy throughout the course of a 17-game NFL season. So I think that's something that sets apart the good teams from the mediocre teams, or the great teams from the good teams.
There you go. So let's get specific here, Gabe. I'm going to test you on this. I don't know if this is anything you've thought about, but as far as if this person gets hurt, how does it work? So what I'm figuring is if we have an injury at center, if we have an injury at right guard, or if we have an injury at right tackle, Mccary could be the first one up at all those positions. I think if something happens where Ronnie Stanley isn't ready, or if he gets hurt, Morgan Moses would probably slide to that left tackle spot, and you put Mccary into right tackle. Left guard, I think, is the different one in this. I think if Tyree Phillips isn't in there, then Ben Cleveland will be, and vice versa. So would you see, I'm figuring 4 out of the 5 scenarios, if the Ravens have an injury, Patrick Mccary is going to be in that Ravens lineup.
I think that's definitely possible. The one position that I might say could stick as a pure tackle position would be right tackle. I think that there is enough tackle depth that depending on how, some of these players look in the preseason, it could be a Jawan James who goes in and plays right tackle if something were to happen to Morgan Moses. It could be Daniel Falele, for instance,
Hmm.
if he looks better than expected, or I shouldn't say that. If he is ready to play, as a rookie, he might be the first man up at right tackle too. So that's where I'm not sure if Mccary would be the first guy, but I think definitely for the interior lineman, he's probably that guy who comes in and plays. And he's played, both guard and center for the Ravens a decent amount in the past. So I can definitely see. I think he would be the guy who would be the first one called upon.
Yes, that's a good scenario you painted, though. If something happened and Falele got the nod over Mccary at right tackle, that to me would bring a big smile to my face. I started smiling when you were talking about it because that would tell me that the big guy is progressing faster than expected. Yeah, it might take a little bit while for Daniel Falele, but overall, on Mccary, just to close, very good player, just a ball player. One of those
Yep.
guys that's a ball player. I feel like he could play defense if you asked him to. Like he just always like his head's in the game, man. His head's in the game. He's one step ahead. He overcomes what other people see as his shortcomings, and he just provides a solid player over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he just seems like he's a true Raven. He's willing to play through injuries, do what he needs to do. He's going to put his neck out there for the team, and I think it was an obvious choice to offer him the contract extension just based off what he'd been able to do. Coming in as an undrafted free agent, playing all over the offensive line, and having that versatility, having that will to compete and will to play, no matter what. I think he's definitely someone that is going to be a huge piece of the puzzle moving forward for this team.
So, guys, down below, I know there are a few fans that are like, "Why are we paying $6 million a year for a backup? That's a bad move." Man, to me, Gabe, it's a great move. It makes me feel a lot better. I'd rather have that. I'd rather have Mekari as the sixth offensive lineman than Sammy Watkins at wide receiver blocking somebody else's development. So, just to give you a $6 million comparison there. So, what about Tristan Colon? Now, I believe he goes by Tristan Colon now, not Colon Castillo. So Tristan Colon, this is year 3 for him, I believe, Gabe. He's seen some action, and when he's played well. But we're getting to a numbers game here, man, and it might be tough for Mr. Colon to make the team. I'm not sure if we could stash him on the practice squad because he does have some good tape out there, but he has some physical, what other teams would view as limitations with his size and his length. So, man, give me an overall impression on Tristan Colon.
So like I said, or like you said, I've liked what I've seen from him when he's been out there. I feel like he has decent size, he has decent athleticism. He can move people pretty well at the point of attack. He hasn't had a lot of experience, but he's been available whenever needed, to be called upon. Um, I, I do think he is probably mostly going to be a center for you. I'm not sure about his ability to play guard, and that really limits, I think, his ability to stick on the roster because the Ravens have that starting center in Linderbaum. They have the backup that's a known quantity with Mekari. Maybe they want to have a third player who can play center for you because Mccary could be asked to go somewhere else, and if there's a situation where multiple players get injured, then you might be stuck. But it's really tough. He's not being paid a lot of money, so that's working in his benefit. But it's when it comes down to a numbers game, he might be on that cusp of being the odd man out. That's the truth and the harsh reality of the NFL.
It really is. And, again, nothing against him. I think that he's played admirably when he was in there. When Bradley Bozeman missed his game, I was actually at that game, the Rams game, and Bozeman standing on the sideline. And I'm like, holy, what happened? Did Bozeman get benched? What's going on here? I didn't understand. I think he was sick that game and just, physically sick. And, man, I got an up-close view because I was watching Tristan Colon early in that game to see if we were having any problems with a guy named Aaron Donald on the other side. And I didn't miss a difference between Bozeman and Tristan Colon. The thing was we were running the Tyler Huntley offense that I think Lamar could use a little bit incorporated, give him that luxury of some easy some easy peasy plays in there for Lamar, like we were doing for Huntley. But take nothing away from Tristan Colon. We saw him in Week 18 against Cincinnati last year, or the year before, 2020, and then we saw him against the Rams in 2021. I thought he played really well both games. I think I have cut-ups of those games, of the Bengals game on the channel. Just a solid job. Another guy, Gabe, who moves really well. Good feet for Tristan Colon.
Yeah, I think he's fairly athletic. He has good size. One of the things I mean, going back to that Bengals game that you mentioned in 2020, I think he had a really key block on that J.K. Dobbins long touchdown run. He was one of the guys who sprung Dobbins on that. So he is capable of being an impactful player in the run game. He's not going to be someone to kind of mess around with. He definitely has a lot of the qualities that you look for, especially for, we're talking about a backup offensive lineman in the NFL. So, it might come down to like financial considerations, who's kept and who's let go. I think that, Cologne has, a lot going for him in terms of his upside. He hasn't really had that opportunity to play too much, but when he's been given that opportunity, I think he's done well. So, maybe he's someone that could also be a potential, trade. You get like a late round pick or a conditional pick if there's another team looking to find one of your kind of end of the roster players that might not make the roster cutoff at the 53. So that's something that I'm sure that Eric DaCosta will be looking to do. All of those guys who are kind of like on the bubble, if he can trade away one of them, get a pick back in return, that's something he's definitely done in the past, and he'll probably be looking to do that again.
First of all, we'll just say we hope we're healthy enough to make these tough decisions. But this is a good time, Gabe, to kind of transfer into Ben Powers, because if you ask me today, okay, you can pick either Tristan Colon or Ben Powers to be on the roster, all things equal, or at least be on the practice squad available for the Ravens. I'm picking Tristan Colon, and the reason is his ability to play center. So what if you need Mccary at right guard and you don't have another center, instead of putting somebody, instead of mixing the whole lineup and that kind of thing? Like, I kind of like having Tristan Colon on the roster over a guy like Ben Powers. I think Ben Powers is an average player. Take nothing away. If you're an average NFL player, that's quite an accomplishment. The thing that's working against Ben Powers, a couple of things. One is the competition and all the quality interior offensive lineman we brought in. And secondly, Gabe, he is in the last year of his contract. So after this year, Ben Powers is a free agent, which obviously makes his value a little less to the Ravens this season.
Yeah, and the third thing that's working against Powers is the fact that he got the fourth year performance bonus, or however it's called in the new NFLPA. So he actually has a higher contract number. I think he's getting paid a little over $2 million this year, which is kind
Yes.
of a lot for a player who's likely going to be a backup. That's probably working against him in terms of his likelihood to make the roster. So you can save a little bit over $1 million by holding on to a player like Tristan Colon as opposed to Powers. You then have someone who can play center for you if needed, and Powers does have more starting experience. I agree with you. He's been a pretty average player when he's out there. He's not a liability, so to speak, but he's also not someone who's really coming off the screen as someone who's impressing you. So he's just doing his job, and that's important. There's some players who can't do their job that are starting on some NFL teams. So he might be an upgrade for some teams at that position. So you saw, I think, was it last year that Ben Bredesen got traded, without having even the starting experience that Powers has had. So he had more time on his contract, but we could see something like that happening. I think that could potentially be a move. Or it wouldn't completely shock me if he was just outright let go. If you feel comfortable with the guys, with Phillips, with Cleveland at the guard position, and then you have Mekari, obviously you can play either of the positions as well as the center, and then keeping Colon as that last lineman.
Right, and Kevin Zeitler, of course, you didn't mention, in case anybody's forgetting him. So there could possibly be 4 guards and guards only. Ben Cleveland is a guard only. Ben Powers is a guard only. You have 4 other guys who are ahead of you at guard. That's a tough choice. And I've heard from fans, I just want to address this too. Why are we keeping Powers? Why don't we cut him, save the $2.5 million and sign somebody else. Well, first of all, it's not $2.5 million. By the time you've replaced the guy, it's really you're only saving $1.5 million. So whenever you look at those numbers on over the cap, just as a general rule of thumb, if it says you save $2.5 million from cutting somebody, always take $1 million off for the player who's going to take his spot on the roster, who's probably going to make about $870,000, something like that. So number one, it's only $1.5 million savings. Number two, there could be some injuries here, and all of a sudden you need Ben Powers on this team. So if something happens, if one of the players don't look like they're playing well, there's an injury to somebody else, it would be a nice thing to have Ben Powers on the team. But at this point, Gabe, it looks like a luxury, and it looks like a numbers game that puts Powers on the outside looking in when you're looking at the 53-man roster. And I don't think he would stick on the practice squad. I'm not even sure if he's allowed to, but I mean, the starting NFL lineman, it looks like if I had to predict, I'd say he'd be playing somewhere else other than the Ravens this year, and probably start some games somewhere along the line during the season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I do think it's smart to keep him on the roster at this point because, like you said, you never know what might happen from an injury standpoint. There's still, what is it, 100 days left before the start of the season. There's a lot of time and a lot of potential for someone to get hurt. And in those instances, you want to have as much depth as possible. So it's probably not something that's going to happen until likely near the end of training camp. If there is a move that's going to be made, maybe another team loses a starting guard. Maybe the Ravens lose a starting guard and they need to keep him. But hopefully, it's a situation that works out the best for the Ravens and for the player, whether that's Powers or Colon. I just think that one of them is probably not going to end up on the roster. That's probably going to be my guess, unless something unfortunate happens to the depth.
So my hope here, or my expectation / hope, would be Ben Powers plays a lot during the preseason and kicks butt.
Yep.
Kicks butt. Play him versus the ones when if other teams have ones in there. Play him even against the twos and maybe even into the threes to get him some dominant tape, because I think that's one thing that Powers doesn't have is dominant tape. Like, most of the times, Gabe, it's a stalemate or the guy's doing his job. Two are locked up. Nobody's really winning. You're not pancaking a guy, or the defensive lineman isn't just dismissing you and making a tackle for loss. Those are the rare plays. So, like you said, Ben Powers is doing his job most of the time, like every other lineman. The thing is, you have very few highlight blocks, very few of him just dominating his man or going above and beyond or really clearing space. What you do have on tape is him getting beat off the snap and giving up a quick pressure, like within a second. His guy broke him off, left him in the dust, and he's in Lamar. So the great plays versus very negative plays, it does not work in Ben Powers' favor. So to get him on the field in the preseason, maybe get him some dominant blocks, maybe this kicks another gear of emotion into him where he can really, really turn it loose and, hey, this might be my last shot. I got nothing to lose. I would like to see Powers play a lot in this preseason, and man, hopefully he just tears it up.
Yeah, I think that's the best case scenario. You kind of put him out there to get him some highlights, make him appear like someone that the team could really use, and then get that whatever draft capital you can get, even if it's just like a conditional 7th round pick or conditional 6th round pick. That's something at least better than just like releasing him and getting nothing. So that's your best case scenario, I think. So I agree with you. Put him out there, let him play into the third quarter, maybe even into the fourth quarter. I mean, generally those guys are taken out at that point, but it's definitely something that I would be looking to do if I was Harbaugh and trying to put some tape out there for other teams to consider.
Yes, I love saying good things about every player, but I just have to be honest sometimes. And I think Ben Powers has been a good Raven. He's been available to the team. You never hear a word out of him, but it would be great for both him and the team. I think if he balls out this preseason and somebody looks at him, some other team looks at him and says, you know what, that guy's worth it. Let's trade for him, even if it's just like you said, a conditional pick. I mean, you could package those picks and possibly move up and get a player in the draft. You never know. And then from the Ravens standpoint, if Powers is not on the team, it tells me everybody else is healthy, playing well. We save $1.5 million on the cap. Like, it would be a win-win for the Ravens and for Ben Powers if he's not on this team, say final cuts or like a Ben Bredesen situation where we're able to trade him or move him. It would be good for both parties, I think.
Yep, I think definitely for Powers, let him go somewhere where he has more of an opportunity to, getting those starting snaps, at least having not be the fourth or fifth option at guard on a team. And there's teams that can do a lot better than what they have now, and Powers would be an upgrade for a lot of teams, I think. So it makes
Yeah.
sense, and it's probably the best case scenario for him so that he can actually get that second contract, because it's going to be more difficult for him to get any money as someone who's had very few real kind of contributions to the NFL. He's probably played a little less than a season worth of snaps. I think maybe about a season worth of snaps as an NFL starter, but it's mostly been because of injury. And he hasn't, like you said, he has never been the kind of guy who's put out highlight level tape. He's kind of just been a guy who's out there, and probably a little bit more negative than positive, if we're being honest for him.
Yeah, and he was also, I believe, limited to certain teams that run a certain scheme, and that's power football. If you're an outside zone, Ben Powers isn't the fleetest of foot, the lightest on his feet. He's got a great ability to recover. Actually, for Ben Powers, when he does get beat, he just gets beat a lot. You want him moving forward. You want him with help. So yeah, best of luck to Ben Powers this preseason. Hopefully he shows up in the best shape of his life and plays his best football. It'd be nice to see him continue his career. So Gabe, man, covered 7 offensive linemen. I think you hung in there with me pretty well. Like my wife would have been out of here by now. I've been talking way too much, bro. Way too much. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Looking forward to you and Jordan and getting that. I got to see what's up with him. He's been the traveling man for. Can you give us any jokes on Jordan at Jordan's expense here at the end, Gabe?
Wow, I'm not prepared for that one. That's really putting me on the. Wow. Okay.
Was he trying? Was he on Amber Heard's legal team? Let me know that. Was he part of them?
I don't think he was there, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was, and that's probably why he's been gone so much. He's trying to do as much damage as he can to the to people he's trying to defend. So,
Yes.
yeah, no, Jordan's a good guy. I don't want to say anything bad about him. He's very busy. He has a a lot of important jobs out there. So we as I mentioned before, we do a show together at the Situation Room. So we like to kind of poke fun at each other at times, but it's all in good fun. And in the end, we're all just huge fans of the Ravens, and we love to talk about them. And that's why we're here together, doing this conversation, doing other podcasts, and hopefully, everyone out there can come in and take a listen to us sometime.
Yeah, Jordan's awesome. There are only a handful of people out there I'd even feel comfortable making a joke on. You know what I mean? A lot of us are close and we talk, and but I would never do that. But Jordan, man, we can sling stuff back at each other really well. So yeah, tell him that as a defense attorney, I figured he had something to do with that debacle of a trial, that defense trial we saw. It had Jordan written all over it, man. Jordan written all over it. So yeah. So with that, I want to say thank you to my football family. Goodbye. Love my football family. Thank you to Gabe, Situation Room. Thank you to Jordan. We'll have him on the show soon, hopefully. But with that, Gabe, thank you once again, and say goodbye to people for me.
Bye, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. And Jason, thank you for having me. I always enjoy being on your show.
You got it, buddy. Thank you.